Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ovaltine Talks. We're continuing our special weapon series with possibly the special weapon that's been on a lot of people's minds and on a lot of people's loadouts lately in PvP, the shotguns. I wanted to get this video out before Beyond Light, and it seems like we're going to hit that mark by literally a few hours. So I'm going to warn you now, you should probably get comfy because we're going to be here for a minute. Let's get the obvious stuff out of the way. In PvP, shotguns are running rampant. They're damn good, they kill in one shot, and everybody's using them, so you always have some special ammo. Shit, you spawn in with it. Now, shotguns come in various forms in Destiny. We've got precision frames, we've got precision frame slug shotguns, adaptive shotguns, rapid fire shotguns, heavy shotguns, and the hottest topic lately, aggressive frame shotguns. Now, before we talk about some of the individual pieces, I want to discuss shotguns as a weapon family and kind of what they've gone through over these past couple of seasons. Overall, we've seen them as a whole go from very good to great and absolutely meta to just okay, but never necessarily bad. While there's certainly good picks when it comes to boss damage and total damage, shotguns have kind of fallen off in favor of things like sniper rifles and grenade launchers, mainly in Shadowkeep, and most recently, swords. Year 2 saw a lot of big changes to shotguns overall, with things like the RPMs, or rounds per minute, and rate of fire across frames being adjusted. A big change came shortly after Forsaken's launch, where Trench Barrel was actually nerfed 2 months later in November, where it now deactivated after 3 shots of the 50% increased damage. And they actually updated the perk description to reflect the new behavior and correct an error. It was originally reported that Trench Barrel gave you a bonus to weapon accuracy instead of being in bonus to weapon reload speed, and this was an update 2.1.0. Trench Barrel, even nerfed, is still a good perk, and I still recommend it to people because it's better to tack on a little bit of extra damage than no extra damage at all. Threat Level, the shotgun from the Black Armory raid Scourge of the Past, had a curated roll that came with it and was a damn good shotgun. It was actually the only kinetic shotgun that could roll with Trench Barrel until Season of Opulence gave us Imperial Decree from the Menagerie. Shotguns were a solid option for dealing damage, especially the rapid fire shotguns, like the Ikelos shotgun or Threat Level. Now, the Ikelos shotgun dropped from the end boss of Escalation Protocol. Ikelos was a top tier weapon for many in game activities, including the Last Wish raid, most notably members of Clean Redeem and other World's First race teams actually had this in their inventories for doing boss damage. People farmed like hell to get this thing, myself included, because it was so good. Now, the thing about the Ikelos shotgun is that it only dropped from certain bosses during certain weeks in the rotation. For example, the level 7 boss had a drop chance for the Ikelos weapons, and there were 3. A submachine gun, a sniper, and a shotgun. Bosses and weapons were on a 5-week rotation, where weeks 1, 2, and 3 would be shotgun, SMG, and sniper respectively, but the bosses in weeks 4 and 5 could drop all 3. If you were looking to do in-game content like raids, this gun was basically a gear check requirement, almost to the extent that Gallowhorn was in Destiny 1. Now, Bungie recognized this, and right before Season 6, aka Season of the Drifter, Atwab announced the biggest shotgun changes to date. Rapid fire shotguns, due to being intrinsically full auto, or any shotgun with the full auto perk, became must-haves and dominated PvE activities. So what happened? Well, it got nerfed. Not just the perk, but the entire archetype. The full auto bonus to rate of fire was now only plus 10%, down from plus 100%, and rapid fire frames became 140 RPM, down from 200 RPM, thanks to that intrinsic full auto bonus on rapid fire frames. Now, a slight increase to RPM and rate of fire for the other archetypes was also introduced, most notably aggressives becoming 55 RPM, up from 45, and precisions becoming 70, up from 55. Lightweights actually didn't change, but they had just had it listed wrong. These are actually 80 RPM, but were listed as 90 RPM. So with all these fire rate changes, there was a decrease to base damage across the board for all shotguns, but nearly every shotgun in the game in PvE received a damage multiplier, aside from Legend of Acheris, since it was a heavy exotic shotgun from a Leviathan. Now, In addition to these changes to fire rate and damage, ammo reserves were also adjusted due to you technically now having more DPS on paper and thus increased efficiency. Season 6 also introduced a new perk to shotgun called 1-2 Punch, which increased your melee damage after you hit an enemy with all the pellets in a single blast. This perk was notably found on the Gambit Prime and Reckoning shotgun Last Man Standing, a solar aggressive frame. This update also gave us a slight nerf to shotgun range in PvP, more specifically a reduction in the range that shotguns could one-shot from. So with all these changes, what were we to do? We sought solace in the Lord. Not religiously, but the Lord of Wolves. This exotic shotgun kind of became the exotic shotgun. Towards the end of year 2 and into the beginning of year 3, we saw the Wolves stand proud. Maybe a little too proud. So the shotgun changes we talked about earlier actually ended up indirectly buffing the hell out of Lord of Wolves, because Lord of Wolves wasn't your typical shotgun. This thing turned into an absolute damage hose. This had the updated exotic perk Shrapnel Launcher, which was a burst of solar damage. It was basically a pulse rifle and a shotgun had a kid. And man, was this thing good. The exotic perk Release the Wolves doubled the burst on kill, meaning even more damage. However, it meant more ammo consumption. Instead of doing a 5-shot burst, you now did a 10-shot burst. As good as this gun was for damage, as great as it was for damage both on majors and bosses, Release the Wolves made it shoot through special ammo like it was nothing, and the recoil was much harder to manage on console and for controller players. PC didn't have this issue. PC players actually found Lord of Wolves to be incredibly stable and didn't have nearly as much of an issue with being able to control it. PC also doesn't have the same issues with bloom like console does, especially if you're playing with mouse and keyboard. So this thing actually ended up becoming not only a monster in PvE, but also in PvP. This thing ran roughshod in both sandboxes. Mainly on PC at the time due to being able to control the recoil much easier, but I gotta admit I was not around on PC during the time that Lord of Wolves was kind of king of the hill. But I definitely saw it. Whenever I would watch streamers who would be playing PvP, it was basically guaranteed that I would see Lord of Wolves at least twice during that stream. Definitely more if it was a stream focused on PvP activities, or if it was a streamer who focused on PvP. Issues with overall performance aside on console, I was actually really thankful to not be on PC during this because it was just running rampant, and while you kind of accept the meta and you go along with it, Lord of Wolves was definitely a little much. So what now? Insert OG Mako reference here because you guessed it, it got changed again. Next season, Season of Opulence, which brought us the Menagerie, also came with very specific tuning to Lord of Wolves that I personally thought were fine because it remained a strong weapon but wasn't completely overpowered, at least in PvE. The weapon got a 20% damage reduction across the board, and Release the Wolves was reworked. Instead of activating on kill, you had to manually activate by holding reload, like how you would load Honed Edge on Izanagi's Burden, or change elements on Borealis or Hardlight. In PvE, the combined range and damage boosts were gone, and instead replaced by just a universal damage boost. But this thing was still good in the Crucible on PC until it finally got a reduction in stability on mouse and keyboard specifically, as well as a reduction in accuracy while Release the Wolves is active. This change actually came with the beginning of Season 10, aka Season of the Worthy, and we're going to talk about Season of the Worthy in just a bit. So to give some background, I joined the PC player base a few months prior to this in Season of Dawn, kind of after a break, and essentially skipping Season of the Undying completely. I knew that I was moving to PC in 2020, so a new year, new platform, and new content. I didn't feel the need to buy the expansion on 2 separate platforms, especially not since the issues on console, including load times and menu times and inventory, just seemed to get worse and worse with each season, but that's another story. Season of Dawn brought us more PvE shotguns. Perfect Paradox, the legendary rapid fire shotgun that was also the legendary weapon of Saint 14, which we got back in Curse of Osiris through the Lost Prophecy quest, and Hawthorne's Field Forge shotgun, a legendary that had been in the game since Season 1, but now with new power level caps thanks to being reissued. We'd also get Python. the new Gambit ritual weapon. This was an aggressive void shotgun that also rolled with 1-2 punch, that perk we talked about earlier, but these reissued legendaries could roll with them too. Despite being nerfed and adjusted multiple times over these seasons, I would actually use Lord of Wolves in Season 10 to acquire Python from Gambit over a grind that was not too bad, all things considered. It was exactly how I imagined it would be on PC after the changes, still strong but not super overpowered. Basically, the whole thing was that ritual weapons were supposed to be easier to acquire than pinnacle weapons, but also not as strong as pinnacle weapons. We had much lower requirements for things like Python and Randy's throwing knife and Edgewise than we did for stuff like Mountaintop, Not Forgotten, or the Recluse. But back to the shotguns. Despite 1-2 punch being a great perk, it wasn't enough for shotguns to come completely back into the limelight, save for a few activities and builds like ones that took advantage of Liar's Handshake for Arcstrider's Hunter. This was a perk that boosted your damage. It had cross counter, so you would actually do increased damage after taking damage, and you could basically one-shot or two-shot most major enemies in the game and do incredible damage to bosses. But it required you to use an exotic armor, specifically for that on a specific subclass. Season 10. Now, Season 10, or Season of the Worthy, is what came with the huge changes to swords that saw them go from okay to the top tier damage options we know them to be now. These damage options got even beefier in Season 11 with the introduction of Temptation's Hook and Falling Guillotine, or Boltcaster in Dark Drinker 2.0 for D1 vets. I'm actually going to have a separate video with my thoughts about Season of the Worthy and the ending of Year 3 overall, so let's focus on the weapons. Season 10's focus was on CQC and fighting at really close ranges, hence the changes to swords, and there were seasonal mods that benefited them, like Disrupting Blade. We'd also receive a new set of seasonal weapons called the 7th Seraph weapons, and inside of that set had hand cannon, an SMG, an auto rifle, a light machine gun, a sidearm, and a shotgun. With all of these being Seraph weapons, this meant that they could make Warmind cells, a new seasonal mod and combat damage utility that was absolutely incredible in PvE and still is. But let's talk about the shotgun specifically. Season of the Worthy may as well been called Season of the Shotgun because there were a lot of them. We'd receive 4 shotguns in Season 10 alone. We had the new Solar Legendary 7th Seraph, the returning exotic 4th Horseman, legendary aggressive kinetic Astral Horizon in Trials of Osiris, and in my opinion the most infamous shotgun in Season 10 and in Destiny's history arguably, Fellwinter's Lie from a seasonal quest. As far as PvE was concerned, shotguns were pretty good now. 4th Horseman was fun to use and did huge damage, but had a painfully slow reload without the Catalyst, and once again took up an exotic slot. However, the Catalyst was available from the Season Pass. It added +1 to the magazine and greatly improved the reload speed, a very nice bonus and worth completing if you wanted this thing to be effective. And it kind of took over as the best exotic shotgun for PvE, minus a few issues with tick rate and big damage being dealt out but somehow returned and enemies getting back health. There was a whole thing to go into that we can do in a later episode. But the 7th Seraph shotgun fared a bit better in PvE because it had more utility. First of all, it was a Seraph weapon, so it could make Warmind cells, but it was also a lightweight frame shotgun, meaning you move faster when you had this equipped. Warmind cells were generated through kills with Seraph weapons and basically operated on a point counter system. The higher tier enemy or enemy type you kill, the more points it's worth, and once you have enough points, the next kill creates a Warmind cell. There are also seasonal mods to add additional effects to Warmind cells, including doing more damage with them, taking less damage from enemies around them, suppression effects on enemies that are close to a Warmind cell, adding burn damage over time, you name it. Because shotguns and other specials were used primarily to kill majors, ultras, elites, and bosses, your yellow and orange bar enemies, this gave the Seraph 7 shotgun a lot of utility in PvE. It also helped that the gun could roll with some awesome perks for PvE, like Trench Barrel, Assault Mag, Auto-Loading Holster, and Vorpal Weapon, which allowed you to do more damage to bosses. But what about PvP? PvP was the main reason we could call Season 10 Season of the Shotgun. In addition to the sheer number of shotguns that were introduced, the degree of shotguns is important here. 7 Seraph wasn't only a good PvE shotty, it could roll with great perks for PvP like Slide Shot, Quick Draw, Accurized Rounds, and Snapshot, on top of being a lightweight frame, which had that intrinsic buff to movement speed while equipped. Aside from this, lightweight shotguns weren't very popular in PvP even with the speed boost. The other notable lightweight, Parcel of Stardust, which dropped from Gambit and later became farmable in the Menagerie, was good, but Parcel suffered from the fact that it wasn't consistent with being able to kill or one-hit kill at the ranges that other shotguns, most notably aggressive or adaptive frame shotguns, could, and even less so after that nerf to one-hit kill ranges. The biggest thing going for Parcel was that it was a lightweight with good perks, meaning that you could shoot and close the distance to clean up with a melee, which was a common shotgunning strat. In my experience, the 7 Seraph shotgun fared much better at being able to one-shot, but this could be due to a number of factors, including barrel length. Now, I know that sounds wild, but barrel length actually matters when it comes to range, especially on something like a shotgun. This is why you'll see people playing certain shotguns with certain ornaments. I'd highly encourage people to go check out Fallout Plays, another Destiny content creator. I can't recommend his videos on shotguns enough because he does a lot of in-depth testing and breakdowns on what goes into shotguns being good and able to secure kills in one shot. Now, there's a lot of funky stuff at play with barrel length, including aim assist cones and overall shot spread cones, along with a lot of shotgun RNG. That RNG is present with pretty much every shotgun, but it hits some archetypes harder than others, hence why our Parcel was alright and not necessarily great. Even my max range Parcel with full choke, accurized rounds, opening shot, and a range masterwork struggled to get one-shot kills, and this was even before the nerf in Season 6. Before Season 10, aside from the shotgun world, was ruled by a couple major players that I saw a lot on console and PC. Dustrock Blues was the legendary shotgun when it came to kinetics. It was a precision frame with great base stats and good perk options. I had a roll with 96 range thanks to the perks, and before the Menagerie, you could farm this in lost sectors on the EDZ and Mars, since those bosses had them in their loot pool. The other notable kinetic was the Chaperone. This was an exotic slug shotgun with a perk called the Roadborn. It increased your handling, range, and precision damage after you got a precision kill. You do your job, and the perk allows you to keep doing your job, but better. Chaperone still shows up to PvP in this day and will likely continue to show up since exotics aren't being sunset. Now, the energy slot had some great options as well, like Retold Tale from Dreaming City bounties. This was another precision frame shotgun, but it did void damage, and could roll with awesome perks. For example, mine had Rifled Barrel, Accurized Rounds, Slide Shot, and Quick Draw. This thing absolutely knocked in PvP, and it was my go-to shotgun in the energy slot, but other players saw a more ambitious offering. Meet the very thing that arguably made Season of the Shotgun a thing, the Mindbender's Ambition. But wait, this thing's a Nightfall exclusive drop that you could get in Forsaken whenever the Hallowed Lair was available as a Nightfall that week, so why the hell is it so important here? Competition. At the time of this video, Mindbender's Ambition is still in the top 10 for both usage and kills in PvP. In competitive and quick play, it's ranked 8th in comp for both categories, and in quick play, it's ranked 9th for kills and 5th in usage. This video is being made at the end of Season 11. Remember that range nerf to one-hit kills we talked about earlier? At the start of Season 10, we got another change to shotguns that saw their cone angles adjusted on a per sub-archetype basis instead of being just adjusted by the range stat, and aiming down sights no longer affected the effective range for shotguns. Accuracy and hitting all your pellets was key, so aggressive frame shotguns were the best options to be able to score a one-hit kill at the max possible distance, whether you were aiming down sights or hip firing, because they were straight up combat shotguns with full length barrels. But intrinsically, aggressive frames were sluggish and not the fastest things to swap to or aim with, being listed as hard hitting but having high recoil. Mindbenders became the exception to that rule because prior to Season 10, it was the only aggressive shotgun that could roll with quick draw, thus taking care of the handling drawback. Mindbenders was the energy shotgun in the Crucible, since Quick Draw came in combination with the rest of the perk options that boosted range like Rifled Barrel or Full Choke and Accurized Rounds. However, Season 10 would give us two aggressive shotguns that not only had quick draw, but would also be able to come into Year 4 with new power caps. Trials of Osiris was back in Destiny, and Trials was the pinnacle PvP activity. A 3v3 elimination style game mode, but instead of shared lives like in competitive, you could revive your teammates if they went down, but Trials was power enabled. Meaning, the higher your power level, the more damage you dealt to and less damage you took from players below your power level. Trials was the PvP focus for Season 10, and after months of speculation, leaks, data mining, and Bungie saying, not in our current plans, there's a lot of work that has to be done to PvP before we even think about Trials, we had Trials confirmed. It was a big deal. This was the big deal. This was supposed to bring people back and get them excited about PvP, to go flawless and reach the lighthouse and get sweet, sweet Trials loot. Now, within the Trials loot was a new shotgun named Astral Horizon. This was an aggressive frame that could also roll with quick draw, but it was in the kinetic slot, which means you could rock one of the other weapons that wreaked havoc in the Crucible during Season 10, Hard Light. This combo was huge in Trials, along with the other kinetic specials like Revoker, a pinnacle sniper that we'll talk about in the next episode, but Hard Light was king. Hard Light was the auto rifle. It was responsible for being number one in kills and usage in Trials for a couple of weekends. Astral Horizon, though. Now, with all the other issues that Trials had, Astral contributed to a pretty big one in terms of loot, because of not only what it was, but how good it was. In the week where Astral Horizon was available, fire teams would constantly reset their cards to farm for this gun, since it was the reward for winning 3 games. In Trials, you got weapons and armor for 3, 5, and 7 wins respectively, with a little extra for going flawless. Also, Trials had card-based matchmaking rather than the usual skill-based matchmaking that we see in things like competitive or when it was present in quick play for a little while. In theory, Trials was supposed to get harder as it went along. You matched up with teams who had the same number of wins that you did, and to get to the lighthouse, you had to fight a team that was also gonna get to the lighthouse. 6 wins versus 6 wins. However, since people were farming for the shotgun, you had absolutely stacked trios that were farming for it. And since you were running into people who were also at low wins on the card, you could just reset and completely stomp and farm lower skill players or newer players who could have just been starting their card or just straight up hadn't won a game. It was a mess and led to a rich get richer kind of scenario in the Crucible, since there was no guarantee that you'd be matching up with a team who was also farming for the shotgun. But it was highly likely that you just end up stomping a newer team at the beginning of their card. Bungie would actually make numerous statements and address this multiple times, as well as make changes to the Trials loot system, including wins needed to get rewards and how rewards were dealt out, but that's a story for another day. So what about the people who didn't play Trials? Where was their option? Well, it was time to be told a lie. Fellwinter's Lie, the notorious sniper shotgun, was back and available from the quest The Lie. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the quest and what went down because, again, that's a whole other story that'll likely be in the video about Season of the Worthy, but Fellwinter's was back, and it was damn good. An aggressive frame shotgun that came with a fixed roll of some amazing perks. This time, it had the intrinsic perk Shot Package. Basically, it's an aggressive frame shotgun, but with a more uniform, meaning consistent, pellet spread. Other perks present on this shotgun were accurized rounds, and your choice of either quick draw or slide shot, an opening shot, or vorpal weapon. All incredibly strong perks that made an incredibly strong shotgun. And honestly, it actually wasn't too horrible to get because once you could get it, you had a choice. You could either grind out 1,000 shotgun kills in PvE or the equivalent to 100 shotgun kills in PvP. I opted for PvP since I honestly didn't mind the Crucible, but man, it was Shotgun City in there. Everybody was going for the same thing, and it showed. Personally, I used 7th Seraph and Lord of Wolves to get mine. Yeah, I know I turned into one of those guys for a couple games, but I was mainly using Seraph. In the mix, there were shotguns of all types. Chaperones were out. Dust Rocks were getting brought out. Retold Tales were showing up. I think I even got killed by somebody using a Badlander of all things. And of course, this is where we saw the Dire Benders and Spare Benders combos at their peak. along with the folks from Trials who brought their Astral Horizons out to play to go ahead and get themselves a lie. So what the hell was the point? Well, I guess Bungie kind of decided to take the Syndrome approach, where if everyone's super, no one is, right? Mindbenders, being a Forsaken launch weapon, was also getting sunset and wouldn't be able to be infused past 1060, meaning it would not have a place in Trials or in other power-enabled PvP like Iron Banner. It was also a rare exclusive drop from one of the Nightfall strikes that people honestly hated. Like, seriously, Forsaken gave us probably two of the most lamented strikes in the entire playlist, with the other being the Corrupted. Nightfall or not, when these showed up in the regular Vanguard playlist, people would straight up leave. But it made sense. Give everyone, or at least everyone who had the season pass, a chance to get a shotgun that performs similarly, if not better, and could be used in in-game PvP. Plus, it was a nice piece of nostalgia, or a nightmare for D1 vets, your mileage may vary of course, and you could get the gun by doing PvE or PvE. Because people complained about being forced to play PvP to get pinnacle weapons that were also top tier in PvE, like Mountaintop or the Recluse. Now, me, I'm a combo guy. I do more of the PvE stuff, but I do enjoy playing Crucible, even beyond just getting my powerful and pinnacles every week. However, there are some people who absolutely hate Crucible, and I kind of get why, but that's also another story. So now here we are in Season 11 with two absolutely incredible shotguns that pretty much anyone could get in whichever manner they saw fit. You had something for the high skill PvP enthusiast or the sweats, and you had something just as good for the more casual PvP players and PvE players, with options that made the weapon have a place in both sandboxes. So what about everything else? I think the other shotguns are still going to be used in quick play since power doesn't matter there, but Fellwinter's is without a doubt going to remain the top dog. It's the most used shotgun in PvP, period. Comp, Trials, quick play, whatever. And for good reason. Shotguns don't seem to be getting any other changes inside of PvP. If they were, Bungie definitely would have said so by now if that was the case. As far as PvE is concerned, I don't think shotguns as a whole are going to come back to the level that they were in Forsaken, but there's options, especially with the changes to Falling Guillotine getting a 24% damage reduction on its heavy attack. I still think it's going to be good. I don't think it's going to be dethroned and shotguns are going to take its spot again. Like Fellwinter's Lie, 7th Seraph will also not be sunset until Season 13. But what about the here and now? Beyond Light's literally coming out in about a day. And shotguns received a 30% damage increase in PvE for slug shotguns. We got that buff just this summer when Season of Arrivals came out. And we got a new ARC slug shotgun called First In Last Out, which has some great perk options for PvE, including Vorpal Weapon. Now, First and Last Out isn't getting sunset until Season 14, so it definitely has a place, and some people have already been taking advantage of the buff and using it in Season 11. It kind of sucks that all the moon weapons from Shadowkeep are being sunset as well, because we've only had them for a year. Because Blasphemer, which was a kinetic slug shotgun from Altars of Sorrow, had some really good roles going for it in both PvE and PvP. I'd already got rid of mine for vault space reasons, and I'm kind of regretting it, TBH. But First In Last Out has felt great to use, and I think it'll hold up well in the new expansion. As far as our exotics, I think Fourth Horseman may have a spot for overall burst damage, but I don't necessarily see it being meta. There's another exotic shotgun, Tractor Cannon. You guys thought I forgot about that one. It may have some use for utility, specifically for that debuff that it applies with Scientific Method, making your target more susceptible to incoming damage, especially void damage. Now, with Fallen Guillotine getting nerfed, Bungie says that it's still going to be above average, but not as far and light years ahead as it is now. So, I don't know. Spin the Wind's getting nerfed. Shotguns overall, I think, are still going to be good. But maybe we'll have some funky stuff to experiment with Tractor Cannon as a utility piece in conjunction with swords and maybe even slug shotguns. But I still think swords are going to be the big dogs for up-close damage. What I do know is that there is a lot of new stuff coming in Beyond Light that I can't wait to play with all these new abilities and new weapons utilizing stasis. It's going to be pretty wild, and we are getting a new shotgun as part of this season. So folks, that's all I have. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, feel free to go ahead and give this a like and talk to me in the comments about some of your favorite shotguns. I probably missed a couple. I know I missed a few for PvE. We'll have some more videos and more streams coming, especially for Beyond Light, and just not in the weapon front, but talking about abilities, subclasses, and pretty much everything that there is to offer in the new season. So until next time, stay safe, stay well, and I can't wait to see you on Europa. Take care, folks. Ovaltine out.
Zone B lost.